Hello and welcome to Minter Dialogue, episode number 424. My name is Minter Dial and I'm your host for this podcast. I'm thrilled to announce first that my podcast was cited as the 6th overall in the top leadership podcast worldwide by FeedSpot. This week's interview is with Peter van der Putten. Peter's Director of Decisioning and AI Solutions at Pegasystems, a company that delivers innovative software designed to increase customer lifetime value, streamline service, and boost efficiencies of their business clients. A specialist on responsible AI, Peter's also Assistant Professor of Data Mining and Creative Research at the Leiden University in the Netherlands. In this conversation with Peter, we dive into using artificial intelligence in business, discussing the state of play of AI, how to build and use AI systems in big business with an aim to drive performance and improve the decision-making process at scale with an AI that is responsible, understandable, and trustworthy. You'll find all the show notes on minterdial.com. Please do consider to drop in your rating and review, and don't forget to subscribe to catch all the future episodes. Now for the show. Peter van der Putten, you and I have been hanging out over the years, and it's really a great pleasure to have you on the show. You are what we could call a specialist in AI, and you have this deep interest in empathy in AI, which is where our paths cross. So in your own words, Peter, I'd like to describe who you are and what you do at Pega.
Yeah, so I'm a director for for AI and what we call decisioning at Pega. That's how can we bring AI, artificial intelligence, into customer interactions or into customer service or into intelligent automation to drive better outcomes, both for businesses and customers. And I have a little side job as well because I'm a part-time professor in AI at Leiden University in the Netherlands.
So with regard to your professorship, I'm wondering what types of students you have. Are they out and out geeks? Do they have business intelligence in them? What attracts people to AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think what attracts students to AI is the same thing that attracts everyone to AI in a way, because, I sometimes talk about the two Fs, around AI. It's the F of fear, of course. Hollywood has been a big factor, in, all the fear mongering of robots that take over the world. And one day we'll have to succumb to their wishes. But it's not just fear, if it was just fear, AI would have died out as a meme pretty quickly, right? So the other F is the F for fascination. And we have this fascination with AI, ultimately because we're narcissists in a way, because we have a fascination with ourselves. AI provides us a mirror image of who we are as people, it's what is intelligence, where's it coming from? It's an age-old question, but also what is creativity, emotions, all these different aspects that make us human. We can study them through an artificial lens, and in a way that provides us a mirror image of like I said, who we are as people. So, and that's incredibly fascinating. So I think that attracts a lot of people to the domain of AI, both in business as well as in science and research. And then next to that, I also work with students that combine science and art. So finding creative ways to study unconventional research questions or find different ways to output academic work, not just dull papers, but also interactive installations and things like that.
And how much of the work that your students need to do actually requires an understanding or even a knowledge of coding, Python, and so on?
Well, there has been a lot of democratization, what a word, so of AI, of course. So there's a lot you can do, with fairly simple tools if you want to make creative use of AI. For my students, it helps to do a little bit of programming, but it's more like tinkering and hacking So putting all kinds of libraries and capabilities together to build stuff, especially in the creative domain. Of course, on the Pega side of the house, we pride ourselves of being kind of a low code, no code platform. So building applications without having to program.
Well, which is presumably an extra layer of complexity, because you need to create the AI that does the job, and then you need to create the layer that allows your clients to do it with an easier interface, with the low code, no code, sort of simpler visual versions of it. And yet underneath, you still need to have the robust engine. That must be quite a challenge.
Yeah, that's what makes it interesting when we're building these kind of AI systems. Well, we're not building AI systems per se. We're building the building blocks,
Mm-hmm.
if you wish, the Lego blocks that our clients can use to build their AI applications. And yeah, like you said, there's there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that happens in the back end underneath in these systems, not just to scale up AI to to web scale, where you're driving hundreds of millions of decisions daily across this entire client base, but also to make sure that that this AI is also reliable and robust and trustworthy, and that we avoid bias and all of those things.
Well, so the theme of this year's Pega World, which just happened, was entitled, or is the way I saw it, "Crushing Simplicity." And at the first
Complexity,
level,
if you wish. Yeah.
oh yeah, oh gosh, crushing complexity. Yeah, there you go.
I'd love to. That's my other job in university. I crush simplicity and I make things more complex. And at Pega, I crush complexity and make things more simple.
Well,
Right.
I have to imagine at some level that's good. That's a good two-way idea, because at the one hand, if you make it too simple, people don't really understand what's going on, because underneath there are lots of complexities within AI. So you've got your low code, no code interface for the customer that's simple, but underneath it, it's a complex, robust system.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. 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 So that's also, and it's not just about being able to insert AI in all these customer interactions or in business processes, and to make them smarter and make them work better. But I was already hinting it a little bit. A big topic nowadays is trustworthy AI and responsible AI, and how can
Yeah.
you apply AI ethics to it so that we can keep the machine under control. Yeah, so and that's what makes it interesting, right?
Yeah. Well, I certainly want to get into that. What with regard to crushing complexity, what I mean, obviously, I've worked in big business, and I understand this general idea of complexity, and amongst the complexities, of course, are the human interactions and egos and culture of an organization. Can you give us an insight as to how Pega goes about bringing that simplicity to such complex cultures and maneuvers and situations?
Yeah, great question. Ultimately, you would want to use the irony of it, that AI sounds maybe like some fancy advanced technology, but ironically, it's a technology that can help companies to become more human in an environment that's more and more digital, where customers have tons of different channels to interact with you, not just talking to employees, but also engaging with you directly through mobile banking apps or websites, etc. And I think, from the responsible AI perspective, if we want to keep the AI under control, we need to be able to embed our ethics into the AI. But from corporate strategy perspective, you have a certain brand and you want to express certain values, right? So, and you can also, actually you should build those values also into your AI system. So if I give a simple, some simple example, it could be, let's take customer service, for example. Uh, you know, one of your companies, your authentic brand could be all around. I make things easy. We make things simple. You get the most out of what we can provide to you. You can imagine that an AI, if you would use an AI, then in customer service, you gear it towards particular outcomes. Outcomes like, let's make sure that we resolve the issue as quickly as possible, maybe without even human intervention. Fix it within a chatbot, or detect problems before they arise using the AI, and make sure that our customer can get on with their life, right? So the value then is all this simplicity, as well as removing friction and making things super easy. Another company could have more of a business value, where they want to say, well, we want to be the company that truly understands your needs, where we want to engage with you to find out. Of course, we want to resolve your customer service issue, but also we want to proactively see how we can better service you, right? So, of course, this company, this AI would also gear towards, oh well, let's fix problems quickly, but would then also take a step back and reflect and say, well, how can we provide better service to you on top of that? Yeah. So the emphasis would be less on, let's hang up the phone and fix it as quickly as possible so that you can get on with your life. The emphasis would be more on, well, let's fix the issue, but let me also understand, like, is there anything else we can help you with today?
All right, so let's imagine in business, I'm running the company, and one of my values is long-term relationships with my customers, or like some value like that. How does that actually get dripped down the ladder? Because when you get to the actual programmers, how they don't know the business, they don't know your customers, they're just typing in Python. And
Yeah.
how do you make that connection? If you're the leader of the company, you don't probably want to be the person who goes down to speak to the programmers, because you don't speak in a language that they really comprehend typically. How do you ensure that those values are being expressed down to the code?
Yeah. Well, so one thing is, and like I said, we don't really program in Pega, like you configure applications, but that's a little bit beside the point. I think as a leader, that's one lesson is, don't leave it to the programmers, right? So that's the whole reason why you want your marketing people, or your customer service people, or your customer operations, intelligent automation people, the domain experts, ID for the business. They need to own AI. They need to be able to specify, how do we want to drive intelligent automated decisions, for example, right? So I think that's one of the lessons is make sure don't see AI as some evil black box algorithm that you don't have control over and you leave it to IT. No, actually, AI is very much, it's not a technology, it's almost also a business philosophy, right? Where you want to, where you want to be able to embed your values in every single customer interaction, in every single customer process, where you keep that level of control, where you continue to learn from feedback. And so, shall I give an example, maybe just
Please
to
do.
boil it
Yeah,
down a bit?
sure. Yeah.
This is my part. This is my academic kick again. So I like to keep things abstract, but let me make it concrete. Yeah, with my pack hat on here. Let's take my previous example was from customer service. I'll switch maybe to marketing here. And let's say I am this company that's more into long-term relationships, and let's say I have some kind of always-on brain set up that's that's hooked into all the channels where I'm interacting with customers, not just these boring old marketing channels like email. Who reads email nowadays? But really, all the channels that you use to interact with your customers. Let's say my bank, my mobile banking app, my website, uh, branches if they open up again, right? Contact centers, you name it. And we want to insert, maybe we're inserting smart recommendations in all those channels that would enhance lifetime value experience for customers. If we want to build in this example, if we want to build in our values around we're more in it for the long run, we can really make that tangible in such an AI system. One is we're not just going to focus on marketing and sales offers then, we're going to help you get more value out of the relationship with the company. Yeah, we have whatever banks like Home Bank, they do look at like how can we warn customers that are about to incur any fees so that we can prevent that from happening. We don't want to be making money on fees. We want to make sure that that we enhance the financial well-being of our customers, right?
That'd be nice.
Or how can we nudge our clients towards certain benefits that the government actually offers to their citizens, and based on our data, we can probably figure out with some clever AI for what benefits you may qualify. So you would think, like, why does a bank go into a business like that? Well, it makes sense if you think that your vision statement is to enhance the financial well-being of customers and businesses, but you make it real in all those millions of interactions that you're having daily with your customers, and you're inserting those recommendations. So it's a broader set of recommendations than let me just sell you a credit card. And the other thing is, how do you prioritize? Because at any given moment, Peter opens up his mobile banking app, and there could be hundreds of things I could talk about. So I need to arbitrate and decide what is the best thing to talk about. Yeah. And am I going to talk about the stuff that's most relevant for Peter, where maybe my AI says, well, this is something that Peter would be most relevant for Peter, something that would give him most value, and that he's likely to be most interested in? Or am I going to take into account what is the margin impact of such a recommendation? Now, you can see where I'm going. If you're more towards the long run, you probably take a customer-centric, more empathic approach, where you say, well, let's do what's right for the customer. That our job is to do what's right for the customer, and then the rest will come. Yeah, so you would prioritize more on, hey, what is the customer interested in? Are there particular real-time situations with this customer? Like if I'm to go back to the Aussie example, if there's a bushfire coming my way, you probably don't want to talk about let me sell you a credit card. You want to help a customer with that emergency situation, right? So this is how you can really embed it, these things. This is a marketing example, but talk, like take a wider perspective. Don't just to try and flog products at people, and also do what's right for the customer. And there needs to be something in it for the company, but that you can take a long-term perspective there.
Well, it's a fascinating idea of including real-time data that could include the fact that I'm in the middle of a burning fire, or the weather or such like. But if you pursue this line, I'm the executive that's saying I want to enhance my long-term relationships with my clients using your technology or AI in particular. What about measuring against that? How do you actually say, all right, well, give me some KPIs to hit those goals? Because if I'm the marketing guy, by the way, I'm going to come back and I'm going to make sure that the KPIs satisfy, right? Because
Yeah.
I have an incentive to make sure that the boss is happy. How does one oversee this idea of measurements that are as true to the need and the values that you're trying to install?
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting on an important point, because and I'm glad we're talking about this, because it's not about advanced technology. It's about how do you how do you improve what you're doing? So measuring outcomes is incredibly important. Yeah. And I think what's new here is that normally in management you have these very high level KPIs, and then some people are doing some reporting somewhere, and then trust me, we measured it, and it's okay. But here, if we're using AI, we're inserting it into every single customer process and every single customer decision. We can measure really, if you do it well, you can measure really at that micro level. What was the impact? Did the customer like the offer and accept it? Was the customer issue resolved, and how long did it take? Or so you can really go down all the way to where normally in management you have to look at like high level KPIs, and it's not really clear how that bubbled up to those high level KPIs. Here we can actually generate them from the millions of interactions and processes that are being executed on a daily basis. Now, to throw in some caveats, of course, there are some of these cliches around if you can't measure it, you can't measure it. But there are also I forgot the exact quote, but the moment the moment the goal becomes a metric, that's when the problem starts, right?
Exactly.
Because the key thing is that you need to um, that you need to measure wisely what you want to measure, and that you need to be aware of any kind of side effects.
Yeah,
Let's
of
say if the
course.
goal is to provide the earlier company that just wanted to be the simple company, and we are frictionless. You could set up systems that minimize the average handling time for a call. But if that leads to agents just throwing, just telling off customers and hanging
Sure.
up the phone without resolving the issue, then that's not right. So you need to
Yeah.
make sure that you don't balance, that you don't just measure, how long does it take how long does the call take, but also was it truly resolved, and or
Yeah.
did it take a number of additional calls to actually resolve the issue?
And of course, as soon as we start talking about long-term relationships, to use the specific example, the impact of an issue now, what we're looking forward to is that's the becoming a multi-year relationship. And so
Yeah,
it's, you can't exactly measure the cause and consequence at some level, which is typical in
yeah,
business. The
yeah. And
other,
those are some of these longer term measurements that you can also see. Like um, um, I gave the example in the marketing space, where forget traditional email and whatever. Look across all the channels where you're engaging with your customers, and you, of course, what you can measure. Well, for example, are these recommendations relevant and being perceived useful by the customer? But there's a longer term side effect that when customers start to appreciate that, and because you're using AI the right way, not the evil way, then you will actually see that the volume of those recommendations will actually also go up, because you will extend your reach in all of those channels. People will um, they won't see it as a whatever. um, they will see it as good use of their data, as opposed to this bank is just spying on me to make an extra buck, right? So then longer term you will see that this uh, um, for example, the total volume of recommendations that will start to increase and increase, and the number of channels that you will hook into this will start to increase. Or you can
yeah.
also do, of course, more like market survey type um, studies to see, well, like how do more qualitatively, how do people, how do people perceive this? Is this a value add?
So, Peter, we've talked a few times, mentioned this idea of ethics and responsibility, and generally governance. There's not a leader that doesn't understand that there are ethical issues. So fine, we understand that there are biases that come into play. But if I'm the leader and I'm suggesting that the ethics of my company is such, how does one also make that come alive with regard to AI? because again, you've got programmers who are just executing zeros and ones somehow in a program that's designed to be ethically okay, but fine, that's lovely in theory. How does one actually materialize an ethical framework in AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is obviously there's no lack of attention for the ethical aspects of AI. That plays into the first F I was talking about, the F of
Fear.
fear. But it's not just unevidenced fear. Like there are well documented cases of AI going haywire, and it's a generic technology that you can apply good and bad. Uh, so uh,
Music to fill your ears.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's keeping me awake. So it is a very important topic. Yeah, but the problem also is that ethics sometimes is seen as a problem or a constraint, and what can we not do? Whereas ethics was invented as a philosophy to help people to sort out what they should do, not what they are not allowed to do, right? So,
Mm.
and I think we see a lot of EU regulation, for example, that was announced 2 weeks ago, that the EU is proposing, yeah, maybe the some of the more stricter policy frameworks for ensuring that AI is used for good, yeah, and they identify high risk AI systems where they want to where there needs to be kind of a central registration, similar to privacy related data. And we need to make sure that they're transparent and unbiased, and etc. But ultimately, I think for a business leader, it's important to understand that there is already a lot of regulation in that area, and there will be even more regulation coming because self-regulation is not going to work. Yeah. So, and I agree with that actually, because having government regulation allows also for a more level playing field. But ultimately, it will only set kind of the boundary conditions of what can we not do. And the real interesting question is, yeah, within these boundary conditions, what should we do, right? So, how, and that's back to that example, for example, whatever, the marketing example again. Are we going when we need to choose between two things I can talk about? Do I talk about the thing that would interest that customer, assuming that they opted in for these type of recommendations? But are we going for what's best for the customer, or are we just going to fill our own pockets and do what's right for in this example the bank in the short term? Yeah. Um, and that's where and you can really build that into these AI systems. In this example, what is the formula? How I want to make it like super technical. What's the formula? How I want to prioritize? How I want to rank these recommendations. So that's the beauty of it. We can actually express those values in these systems, but we need to take a stance on it. Like uh, what are the values that, as a business leader, that I want to be built into those systems, and that goes beyond just satisfying, the government policies and the regulation. Because I said even the strictest ones, EU ones, they still leave a lot of room for both empathic or sociopathic AI. And so it's really within that framework, you need to kind of decide what values do we want to well what values do we want to um, build in these AI systems.
It's so true, Peter, that in the way ethics is organized and talked about, it's always about the bad, and the fear, the risks of it going wrong, and then the law, of course, is usually not only broad but usually late in terms of applications, and so you could always be faced with a law that you then need to retroactively or just go back into your AI to fix because you went in with a bad ethical framework. And
Yeah,
yet ethics is bad and good. And
exactly.
and and we tend to forget that part.
Yeah, that's how how the Greeks were talking about it. How can I lead a good life? How can I be a good company? Right.
And when you
That's what
do
it's about. Right.
and
So
when you do that, what's so important is to manifest what good means for you. So, because when you're down at the programming level where you have millions of micro actions, it's hard to do the interpretation all the time correctly. But if you're a leader and you have these values, these ethics, that you need to somehow explicit the behaviors, the feelings that you're trying to achieve, and say, listen, if it comes down to it, I want this to happen, even if it means less money.
yeah, absolutely.
But
Yeah, and
that's a very
the
hard thing.
beauty of it.
That's
Sorry.
it's just a very hard thing to do if I'm a leader. And I don't think most leaders are equipped or aware of this challenge.
Yeah, so maybe we need a little AI course for execs. You see that happening actually. In that sense, I think it's also very healthy to demystify AI a little bit. It's both the techno utopians where AI is a silver bullet, but also maybe the whatever the certain AI justice warriors where AI is always evil. That's not going to fix the issues we have in AI. Like if we want to address things like bias and transparency, etc., we need to we shouldn't say it's a silver bullet. We shouldn't vilify the technology in general either, right? So we should look at AI systems and say, how can we take them apart? How can we white box them? How can we demystify them actually, right? So that we can that we can keep them under control. Um, and yeah, so but ultimately, like as a business exec, this is it's a form of evidence-based business. But maybe the only difference is that rather than using data to decide, whatever, where to open a new factory, right, which is a macro level decision, it's building those values and strategies into millions of automated decisions that are happening every day, in your intelligent automation process or in your customer service uh, um, centers or in your one-to-one marketing. Yeah, so if you look at it like that, it's just, yeah, it's quote just evidence-based business. But finally, as a business leader, you have the ability to not just have these kind of big macro type decisions like new factory here, new product line there, but you have the ability to express your company and corporate policy really at the level of those individual interactions and processes, and that's very cool. And also make it a learning, and more of a learning loop. Of course, in business strategy, a lot of people talk about how can we become a learning company, etc. But it's always a little bit at this, fluffy macro level. Here we can actually build it into those interactions and processes, and we can see like, okay, we're making smart decisions, but does it work? The people like our marketing offers. Can we indeed resolve these service issues quicker? Are we making our lives better in automation, not just for customers, for your employees as well? Because these things like empathy, they carry over to not just to customers, but also to employees.
Yeah, and like you said at the beginning, when you're evaluating artificial intelligence solutions for your organization, when you're talking about it at the student level, you were saying, well, it's a way to reflect on who you are as an individual, that fascination with our humanity. What does it mean to put empathy into ones and zeros? Well, actually, what does it mean to be empathic is at the heart of that question. And when you're running a company and you're looking at this, it's actually a fantastic opportunity to explicit your behaviors, forgetting AI, because
Yeah,
you need to have some coherence between the way your AI is operating and the way you as an organization internally forgetting AI are operating.
Yeah, exactly. And you have the opportunity to what is the equivalent of identity for a business? Well, it's brand identity and a brand identity, or your company's vision or purpose. But here you have the opportunity to really build that into the grain of how you're engaging with your customers, partners, employees, like on a daily basis, and all these little microprocesses and automated decisions. And yeah, that's there's risk, but it's a tremendous opportunity as well. um, and it's interesting, like it's not just for execs. If we did a survey, and where we also um, asked individuals at different levels, so also all the way from exec to the workers. And in this future work survey, we asked them, like, okay, um, uh, what does the workforce actually mean, right? So, and it was interesting because almost 3/4 of the respondents, they say that this term doesn't just include the human employees, but also these intelligent machines, also these AI systems that directly engage with customers, or that support employees, that work alongside an AE, not taking it over, alongside an employee, to better serve customers or resolve business processes. So um, down at the work floor, they don't necessarily see it as a threat. Yeah, it's something these systems can work on their behalf, or they work together with these type of systems, and they see them as part of the workforce, and it will allow you to, yeah, similarly how you try to educate your workforce to behave, according to the brand or whatever, in these automated systems. You can also make sure that you embed it. And so you're embedding your corporate strategy, your brand identity, uh, even in very dull back office automation processes. Everyone is a frontline employee in a way, or every robot, even if it's doing the grunt work in the back office, you can build a bit of brand identity in there, I'm sure, right? So, um, so you get much better. Well, I hate the word, but much better control of whether, um, well, whether we're working towards the company strategy, purpose, and brand identity.
In the interview I did with your CEO, Alan Treffler, one of the things that was fascinating to me, and it continues to fascinate me with what you're up to at Pega, is this idea of encoding empathy, or at least integrating empathy as a measurement, as a method to deploy the next best actions and so on. And it seems to me that you guys have evolved somewhat in that empathy can't be something you delegate to the machine to do with your customers. It needs to be part of your culture if it's to absolutely be effective over the term, because sometimes the machines need to be handed over from the bot to a person, machine plus person, human. And so if the human isn't empathic, but the bot is, then you got a problem, I think. So talk us through how, with regard to implementing your Pegasystems, where empathy is such an important aspect and measurement, you're looking at the culture of the organizations you're working with.
Yeah, so you're spot on here. Like, so because it's not just about technical capability. Even the technical capability, uh, Pega is a key part as a central brain and a central muscle, but we're not the only part of the capability. We live in a whole ecosystem of systems and processes that we integrate into. We were only the core muscle and the core brain, but regardless of capability, it's things like people, process, and strategy, and culture, that need to be addressed, right? So, um, and I don't think it's just a matter of making sure that your employees are, following those same values. That's important, of course, but or that they do, like as humans, we're pretty good. Well, we can also be pretty bad at being empathic, but in a way, like we can express these values in how we interact at a personal level. Um, but it's important to well to make clear that well, there's more needed than just like building these values into these systems. And you need to communicate, what are we doing, why are we doing it. And so um, in the example of the bank that I gave, it was their high level statement is to improve financial well-being. Hence, that's why we are embarking on this particular customer engagement platform. And the whole idea is that we do what's right for the customer, yada yada. And it's important to explain it, because otherwise, yes, for maybe for mobile banking app, doesn't make that much of a difference, apart from the fact that marketing needs to be really in the know of why we're doing it. But for if you're delivering these recommendations into a bank or into a contact center, just for people to kind of trust those recommendations, they need to understand, why, what is the rationale behind this, and why are we doing this, and how can I actually work alongside the AI, like um, where it's something that's actually supporting me doing a better job towards my customer, right? So that's where people, process, and culture is incredibly important to get the most out of it.
And Peter, update me as to whether you have figured out a better way to measure empathy as expressed through your activities, because this is of course a topic I've spoken about a lot with other people who are experts on empathy from a psychological standpoint, or at least in the field of medicine, where it's such an important part. How do you actually measure empathy? Has Pega come up with any new ideas with regard to that, or is it still some sort of work in progress, which is mostly the case for everybody else?
It's pretty much, I think it's an eternal work in
Yeah.
progress, right? So um, but for me, when people talk about empathy, and it's maybe um, uh, well, I don't want to shy away from your question, because it's important when we make decisions that we capture outcomes in terms of, is this something that resolves the issue for the customer? Is it something that the customer likes? Of course, you can also use AI and technology to understand the more qualitative statements that people make. When they send you emails, etc., you can better try to detect, oh, this customer is truly pissed off
Hmm.
versus, it's actually a happy customer, and what part of the experience are they happy about? What part of the experience are they not happy about? There are opportunities to use AI specifically also to extract meaning from those interactions, right? So I think that's where we're definitely making progress. Also having the ability to actually, with the full opt-in of customers, etc., understand when there are spoken conversations, what are the conversations about. We acquired a speech to text company recently, so with all the proper opt-ins, we can provide a better picture of how is an agent to a customer conversation going, for example. And so those are examples where we're making use of AI to better understand what is the impact on empathy. Um, where I was going in the beginning is a little bit is, what is empathy really, right? So, and that's maybe this is the academic kicking in again, maybe. But well, when I see different levels of empathy, right? So people say, oh, empathy, whatever. In humans and in systems, it means that this, let's say it's a system, that the system has the intelligence to understand what it is that you need. Okay, fantastic. That's one. Uh, then someone could say, well, that's very IQ oriented. Yeah, I'm missing the EQ here, you know. Isn't empathy much more around what is the emotion of the other, so that we can understand, what is the emotional state of the other, but also what would make the other happy. Yeah, well, incredible important component of empathy. But for me, the true component of empathy is don't do to others what you don't want to have done to yourself, right? So this idea of, well, reciprocity, there we go. Well, we can just we can blame it on a bad audio connection. So putting yourself into the shoes of the other and making sure that you're doing what's right for not just for you, but also for the other. For me, that's if I need to classify the three, the IQ, the EQ, and more the morality of, are we doing what's right for both of us? The third one is the most important. And it's a nice example, of course. Yeah.
It's amazing how when you put on your tie, you go to work, you almost distance yourself from that feeling, because you've got so many other KPIs that you're going after. Well, I wouldn't want that to happen to me, but anyway.
Yeah.
and that
Yeah, but I
surely,
think also as a business leader, there's an element of, without getting too soft, there's an element of karma here. You know, you want to be able to look at yourself in the mirror, or maybe when you retire, you want to be able to look back on your life and say, well, I didn't just make a lot of money for the company. You know, I did
I
something.
did good.
I made customers happy. I made my employees happy. And on the side, I was able to grow a business that became profitable. Yeah,
Well,
but just I grew the business and it became profitable. But if you do it, not the right way, you can't look yourself into the mirror, and you don't have a heritage. Of course, you see that also with the more senior leaders, when they start to introduce all these things around sustainability, etc. And the cynics could say, "Oh, that's just greenwashing," but I think there's a deeper thing behind it, where people realize you're leaving something behind, and the same should go for, empathic and ethical application of AI. Apart from the fact that your customers will vote with their feet, if they don't like how you're using their data and how you're using AI and intelligence, you think you can maybe get away with it and have a marginally higher profit in the next week or the next month, but next year your customers will be gone. Yeah, so that's the other aspect.
So you mentioned karma. In my new book, I absolutely use karma as one of the 5 pillars of future good leaders. So thank you for saying that. One last thing we're going to talk about, Peter, is trust. If AI is to be good, you generally need data. To get the data, you have to have permission. To get the permission, opting in, you need to develop the trust. How much, what is it about AI? How can we render more trustworthy to a customer? Where are the frontiers now in developing trust with the usage of AI that's customer facing?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it may sound like a broken record, but it's the same thing. Are you using, because actually there's a lot of focus on AI and clever analysis. Customers don't like that. They don't like their data being used. Well, I'm a consumer. I don't mind my bank or my telco or whatever insurance company to use my data, as long as it's about the outcome and the purpose. Yeah, well, why are you using it? And is that to my benefit? And if it's something that makes me happy, I'm happy. I'm a happy camper. If you abuse my data, I'm not a happy camper. Yeah, so it's not so much should we use AI, yay or nay, but indeed, like you said, how do we build that trust one interaction at a time? And here comes the interesting thing. Building trust one interaction at a time will take you millions of interactions. You can lose it in one interaction. Yeah, so I think that's something that people and that's really important. And you may lose it for that customer, but if that customer goes online and whatever, you may lose a whole bunch of other customers as well, right? So it's really a loop where you need to trust needs to be earned, right? It's not magic. So you need to make in marketing and customer service, you need to make the customer feel that you're that you're using this to help them. Yeah, ultimately. Yeah, I think that's, and then you get into a loop where where that trust is being built. This is aside from all the things that I see as table stakes, like that your AI needs to be transparent, that you need to check for bias in your decisions and predictions, that you need to be able to layer on your ethical rules and brand strategy rules on top of your decisions, right? So I think it's but for me, that we were talking about, yeah, what are the boundary conditions? That's almost that's almost a given. But then we said, like, within the boundary conditions, what do you need to do? Well, you need to earn that trust, one decision interaction at a time, by doing what's right, and use these. I was talking about these 3 elements of empathy, right? So it's not just about the intelligence and the IQ and the EQ, but making these real-time decisions, automated decisions, in a way that benefits both, benefits everyone. Typically saying company customer, but could also be company partner, or even company employee, and when it's more about back-end intelligent automation. You need to see your employees are your customers as well, right? So you also need to build that trust and relationship with them when through these when they're working alongside of the AI as part of the workforce to resolve issues. So I think that's I'm trying to boil it down to very simple, high level things that you need to take into account. Yeah, the best image for that is maybe I don't know. You probably remember Gordon Gekko, right? So
Sure.
our what was his credo again? Greed is good.
Probably greed is
Something
good.
like that.
Yep. Yep.
Greed is good. Yeah, and I think he's the classical example why having the ability to, because he was very smart, high IQ. I would say he had a very high EQ in the sense of being able to sense what the other people
Like a sociopath.
like a sociopath, because he was lacking the third thing. He was greed is good just for me. Yeah, so that's that's why he's indeed is a sociopath, right? So, and we don't want to be a sociopathic company, right? So, and I think as long as you keep that in mind as a ground rule, yeah, and use that to build that trust with your customers, but also build that trust with your employees. So in marketing and service, customers, as well as with your employees, intelligent automation, then you're doing the right thing, and then you will earn that trust. Yeah.
Peter, I think you've said some pretty radical things. The idea that employees are customers, that can be a wake-up call. And the thing which is interesting links back to this karmic idea, which is the intentions. I think it's really important for leaders to figure out what their intentions are, because afterwards, then, like in karma, you need to actually have actions and then breaking those down. But if you then can, when you, as you also said, look in the mirror when you've retired, what is your legacy? And I think that the intentions to legacy, of course, in the middle is going to be all filled with actions. But that is a very, I think, strong statement for leaders as they look at this and how AI is revealing our humanity. So, Peter, I want to end there. Thank you for coming on this show and talking about that. I think we've come up with some really interesting ideas. I'm going to capture a couple of those in the show notes. How can somebody track you down, Peter? Oh, I don't know, follow you, see what you're writing, researching, anything else, let us know.
Yeah, no, like you can just look me up on Twitter and Peter Vander P. So Peter Vander Putten was already gone. or link up with me on LinkedIn. I'm always very interested to talk to people about the types of topics we were talking about here today. How as an exec or as a leader, we can apply AI in a responsible way to drive better outcomes, and also, not people talk a lot about how can we drive the adoption of AI. I think it should be the other way around. How could AI systems become worthy of our trust? So I'm always open to discuss that with people. And thanks for having me.
And on those words, thank you, Peter. I look forward to staying in touch and continuing on our journey towards a better, more responsible AI. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having listened to this recording of the Minter Dialogue Show. You'll find the show notes and other blog posts on minterdial.com. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to iTunes to give a rating and review. And to finish, here's a song I wrote with Stephanie Singer, A Convinced Man.
A stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger. To feel free, trust is the reason. Still, I won't toe the line. I sit here passively, hope for your respect, anticipating the thrill of your intellect. Maybe I tell myself there's no use in me lying. I'm a convinced man, building an urge. I'm a convinced man, to live and die submerged. A convinced man, in the arms of a woman. I'm a convinced man, challenge my fate. I'm a convinced man, competition's innate. A convinced man, in the arms of a woman. Despise revenges and struggle to see. Live for the challenge so life's not incomplete. What's wrong with challenge? I know soon we all die. I like the feel of a stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger. To feel free, trust in my reason, and let me show you why. I'm a convinced man, practicing my lines.